footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our Round 2 FCS Playoff Wraparound presented by Coach Lehman's Academy. We're going to go around the FCS bracket in Round 2 and take a look at some of the big-time matchups. But first, let's start off in Maryland, where Towson plays host to Fordham. The Rams played an excellent game versus Sacred Heart last week. However, their usually stout run defense was gashed by the Pioneers' ground game, and that's not what you want to hear when you have the sensational Terrence West and the power-running Towson Tigers up next on the schedule. And the Tigers will ride the legs of West all day long, but I worry about their secondary versus the passing game of Fordham, and it's that passing game that I believe will give the Towson Tigers problems. I'm going with the Fordham Rams to pull off the upset on the road versus Towson. Next up, we have the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers taking on the Montana Grizzlies, and Coastal poured it on very early last week versus Bethune-Cookman on both sides of the ball. The Chanticleers were extremely crisp on offense, especially on the ground, and they'll need that running game this week in the frigid weather out there in Missoula, Montana, but the Grizzlies are ready to make a run to Frisco, Texas. Now, the biggest question will be, can that offensive line of Montana keep Coastal from getting in the face of Jordan Johnson? I think they can, and I think they will. I think they'll also knock off Coastal in a close one out there in Missoula. One of the 3 rematch games this week as New Hampshire takes on the Maine Black Bears, and the Wildcats steamrolled Lafayette last week and are looking to double up this year on the Black Bears. Now, Maine had 2 weeks to peel through the tape of the earlier matchup, and the one change I expect to see is from their offense. They have to be able to sustain drives if they want to be successful, and I think they will, and you'll also see a better effort this time around from their run defense, so I like Maine to knock off New Hampshire. Tennessee State takes on Eastern Illinois, and this is the second rematch game of the season as Tennessee State blanked Butler last week 31-0, but they were dominated in every facet of the game versus Eastern Illinois back in October. Now, obviously, their offense has to match the level of execution it enjoyed from the second quarter on last week versus Butler, but Eastern Illinois makes it tough because their defense is very good because of their own offense's ability to jump out early on teams, and they can just pin their ears back and get after the quarterback, and I think that will happen once again this week. Eastern Illinois is just too strong, and I think they knock off the Tigers of Tennessee State. The Paladins travel out to Fargo, North Dakota to take on the Bison, and 2 things that Furman has that gives them a great chance tomorrow is an opportunistic and stout defense, plus a running game led by talented tailback Tanner Scogan, one of the best running backs in the FCS. The Bison are a football team that, 1, will never be out of position, and 2, won't beat themselves. They're just too strong and too complete of a team to take one on the chin at home. I like the Bison to win over Furman, who will be a game opponent, but I think the Bison, again, just too complete of a football team to lose. I like them at home over the Paladins. South Dakota State takes on Eastern Washington, and the Jackrabbits defense was highly impressive last week, holding a very potent Northern Arizona offense to 7 points and 1 for 13 on third downs. And once again, running back Zach Zinner stole the show, rushing for nearly 250 yards. Now, one of the most consistent teams in the country, especially at the FCS level, has been the Eastern Washington Eagles. They have a quick strike offense led by quarterback Vernon Adams, and his talent alone puts a lot of pressure on opposing defenses. Now, speaking of pressure, I think the Eagles will slow down Zach Zinner enough to put pressure on quarterback Austin Sumner to make plays consistently throwing the football and be accurate. I don't think he can do that, so I like Eastern Washington to knock off the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State. Jacksonville State travels to Lake Charles, Louisiana to face a former Southland Conference foe in the Cowboys, and the Gamecocks defense has been lights out since a turnaround back in October, and it helped them blow out Samford last week 55-14. However, if there's an Achilles heel, it's versus teams that can air it out, i.e. Eastern Illinois and Tennessee State. Both of those teams knocked off Jacksonville State in the regular season. And when you look at McNeese with the quarterback Cody Stroud and a receiving core that goes 4 or 5 deep at that position, it gives you reason to like the Cowboys in this game. And I actually do. I think they'll knock off Jacksonville State, but not because of their offense, because of their ability to get to the quarterback. And I think it's that type of pressure that will force freshman quarterback Eli Jenkins to throw more than what he wants to. They'll use that speed on defense to slow down the running game, put pressure on that passing game, and that's how I think the Cowboys will ultimately win the game. And finally, we have our last matchup of round 2 and our third and final rematch game of the regular season between Sam Houston State and Southeastern Louisiana. And the Bearcats last week versus Southern Utah had to come back from a 10-0 deficit early to knock off the Thunderbirds, and they did so in thrilling fashion. That offense was explosive. They were able to stretch the field horizontally like they always do. And this time around versus Southeastern Louisiana, you always ask yourself in rematch games, what changes? Not about the matchups, but more about the adjustments. And the biggest adjustment that has to be made for Sam Houston State, their run defense has to get a lot better this time around. Otherwise, Southeastern Louisiana will run downhill once again. It'll be a repeat performance of what happened in the regular season. And for Southeastern Louisiana, their defense was excellent the first meeting. They were able to get these guys off the field and they forced turnovers. And we know about their offense being able to control the TOP and put teams in a bind with their ground game and the ability to throw the play action pass off of it. But I like Sam Houston State in this ball game. It's tough to beat a good team twice, especially the team with the caliber of talent of the Bearcats. I think they knock off Southeastern Louisiana in Hammond this weekend. And I also want to give a special thanks to our sponsor for this week, Coach Lehman's Academy. Visit the website at www.coachleemansacademy.com.